Hello and welcome to this instalment of Talkin Trim. I'm Jonathon Skinner and today we are looking at the cockpit carpet and other related items for the Jaguar E-Type open two-seater Roadster. Now specifically this is actually going into a Series 1 E-Type Roadster, but the general concept for all of these parts is exactly the same for a Series 1 to a Series 2. There were subtle differences in some of the shapes and also some of the actual materials changed during the different years of manufacture, but the overall concept of them as a basic guide of what you may or may not require for your restoration is going to be exactly the same, so just keep that in mind. This specific kit is actually going into Series 1 3.8 and it's for a right-hand drive. We have obviously all the different patterns for the different versions and right-hand drive and left-hand drive, but it's a Series 1 3.8 and it's the non-flat floor version, so it's the very commonly seen dished recessed front floors, as in those front floor areas there, which I'll go into, as opposed to the early and very rare flat floor versions, which were completely different, so bear that in mind. And what we've got here, we've got a few kits. So we've got the main sort of carpet set, which is pretty much everything in your screen right now, apart from the A-post Harduras, which are sold separately. Then obviously we do have the A-post Harduras. You also have the Underseat Harduras, lower bulkhead and rear bulkhead. All of those items are sold separately to the carpet set, but as car sets. So for example, the A-post are sold as a pair, as are the Underseats, and then these are singular items because you only need one per car set. So bear that in mind. All items in the video are included as standard in our trim kit, and it does work out significantly cheaper to buy the items within the trim kit. The trim kit is essentially our way of trying to give you a complete interior for a restoration. So it's probably 90% of everything you're going to need to restore the car, and the last 10% are optional extras, things that you may or may not require depending on the level of restoration you're working to. So for example, the soft top convertible hood is a optional extra. Also worth noting at this stage, we can do rubber or nylon overmats for the carpets, and they're also sold as an optional extra, so keep that in mind and do refer to our other video below, or rather at the end of this video, for options on the overmats there to keep your carpets nice and clean. So let's start with the general spec of this in terms of the colour and whatnot. This is what we refer to as new tan, commonly referred to as tan, but can get confused potentially with other shades of tan. So we refer to it as new tan. It's an original Jaguar colour. It's like a browny, light brown colour. And the carpets have been done in wool, which is one, original for the majority of the E-types, but two, is also the most premium automotive carpet you're going to want to be putting in one of these sports cars. So the carpets have been done in new tan, and they've been edged in new tan leathercloth. As with all of our carpets, we only ever edge our carpets in leathercloth. We do not use vinyl like other companies out there that do it as a cost-saving exercise, as they don't need to have two materials in stock. Leathercloth, also known as vinide or Rexin, some people call it, is the original material that was used during this era of production for things like piping and edging of carpets, and that's what we stick to. That's the levels of detail that we go to. As you can see, very nicely finished off round corners. It all ties in colour scheme wise and whatnot, obviously. Now it's worth noting colour wise, although this is new tan, there are a few other shades of tan in our spectrum here. We've got honey on the lighter side of things, palomino, and then cinnamon. Most of those cinnamon's an obvious one to go with a cinnamon interior. Those two are very obvious to go with a biscuit or light tan, as some people refer to it, interior. We refer to it as biscuit light tan, just to mix the two names. But we offer a very, very wide range of colours, probably the widest in the industry. So obviously we recommend people have samples from us and have discussions about colour schemes, and we can guide it through. But this specific kit has been done in new tan. It's actually going in a full trim kit, and the customer has actually gone for a full leather kit. So all of the vinyl has been subbed out for leather. It's an upgrade kit, and so certain elements like the heel pads have actually been done in leather as well, which I'll go in more detail on. But these again are the levels of detail that we go to with our kits, especially for very specialist orders that people want to go with. Now the back area here is obviously Hardura, which was an original material. You can potentially upgrade that to wool if you want. Depends on the look and feel you're going for with the restoration. This piece here is Moquette, which again is original for that era of car. For the later cars they switched to vinyl. Of course you could upgrade that to leather if you wanted as well. So there are lots of options there, so keep that in mind. Now if we start at the front of the car, we've got the A-post footwell kick panels effectively. So they go on the upright just in front of the door, and they bend round over the sill and bend around the corner, and they've got the bonnet release mechanism on them there. Now we do a small cross in there to allow you to feed the rod through, and then the chrome finisher goes over the top of it. So that's for the bonnet release. It's worth noting at that stage that the bonnet release was sometimes externally only on the cars, on the very early cars. So for those particular ones, if you have got an external bonnet release, then let us know, and we will obviously not put that cut in there for you, but it's just a guidance cut basically. And just to show you what I'm talking about, these are the A-post Hardura. So right down in the sill, footwell area, bend around, you can see the bonnet release chromes on them. See if I can get a slightly better picture, but I'm not sure. This book doesn't focus a huge amount on the interior trim. There you go, that's a slightly better one there. So right around in the footwell areas there. So you get a pair of those in Hardura normally as original spec. Hardura being a felt back plastic material, so it's got a felt backing to it, and then it's got a plastic coloured top to it with a sort of grain effect to imitate vinyl or leather, and that was original for the cars there. Now, while we're on the subject of Hardura, I'll skip over the carpet set for the time being, and I'll go automatically to the underseat Harduras. So they are literally, as the name suggests, they go on the panel, bodywork panel on the floor directly underneath the seats. We're talking literally underneath here. And you get a pair of them. Again, they're Hardura. And I'm not sure we're going to find a better photo, I'm afraid. No, that's going to be your best one. Yeah, so sort of down there. Now, the majority of the Series 1, Series 2s are exactly like this. They're effectively a square with a curve on the back of it, and the curve on the back of it was for the lower bulkhead section there. And this photo actually shows that nicely. You can see the lower bulkhead curves round there. I think the page before had a good one as well. Yeah, there you are, perfect. So that's the lower bulkhead, and it curves. So obviously that curve is for the lower bulkhead bodywork section there. Now it's worth noting that the very early cars, we refer to it as kind of flat floor, which obviously refers mainly to the front floors, but around that same sort of era they had a flat lower bulkhead, and therefore the under seats were flat. I have got another video, so be sure to check that out, the link at the end. Just bear that in mind, but that was very rare. These are by far and away the most common ones. So you get a pair of those as well, under seat Harduras, and that's an obvious thing to kind of include with your carpet set because they are literally on the floor of the car. So we always kind of suggest people do that, which is why it then has a trickle-on effect. Do you also consider the A-post Hardura, so you're getting the same batch of Hardura with all the same pieces. Same principle again. That's why I've kind of included this rear bulkhead. It's not strictly speaking a flooring item, but because it's Hardura, you might want to think about it at the same time. That's the general concept that we work to. Obviously, if you're getting a trim kit, it doesn't matter, everything's included. But if you're just buying a carpet set, then you'll want to consider the underseat Harduras, which then gives the trickle-on effect. What about the A-posts? What about the rear bulkhead? So keep that in mind. Anyway, so you've got the underseat Harduras, pair of those. Then we've got the rear bulkhead. The rear bulkhead obviously sits at the back of the car behind the seats. It's this big area here, right behind the seats. There you go. So it just sort of bends up and round and up to the light area there. Again, this and the under seats kind of go hand in hand in terms of the specs. So this is by far and away the most commonly seen version, but those very early cars which had the flat lower bulkhead, this part here was much bigger and it went down and bent over into the lower bulkhead section, and you didn't have a Moquette one of these because that was incorporated into there. Again, see our video at the end that goes into details on that, but this is by far and away the most commonly seen version, and it's obviously Hardura again, and it's been bound all the way around apart from on the top edge. Now it's worth noting on my other videos, I believe it was bound all the way around. We've recently updated due to feedback from a well-known restorer that uses our kits that actually for the best restoration this top edge here gets effectively trimmed right underneath the rear light area panels here, and therefore the edge isn't on show, and so it's better to effectively trim that underneath there, cut back any excess if you need to, and trim it underneath those panels so the raw edge isn't on show. You're effectively with these dominated by the position here, which is for the boot release pull and key mechanism, and then obviously the front edge there. So that's why we've kind of updated our patterns there compared to the earlier videos where I showed that. Now it leads on nicely actually to the general concepts with carpet pieces. You get certain pieces which are bound all the way around, like the front floors and the toe boards, etc., but other pieces aren't. And the concept of that is that effectively when everything's said and done in the car, no raw edge will be on show. They effectively get tucked underneath an adjacent edge of either a panel, such as the rear bulkhead, top edge, or an adjacent carpet which has edging on it, which a great example of that is these front gearbox sides here. They will tuck underneath the edges of the front floors here, which I'll go into a bit more detail in a second. So that's the general concept there, that no raw edge is on show. And that's also an area where we have lightly tinkered with and improved the patterns over the years by working closely with such renowned restorers of E-types and other classics. Is normally on unbound edges we tend to make those carpet pieces deeper or longer than they need to be, for the exact reason and purpose it allows you to tuck underneath the adjacent carpets, and that helps with the fitment but also the flow between the parts. So obviously these cars were built during an era of manufacture that was very inconsistent, and therefore sometimes pieces don't exactly fit, and therefore if we're making certain bits longer than they need to be and they tuck underneath the adjacent front floor, it means that it gives you a bit of spectrum and scope within it to actually get a perfect fit where you never see any felt or bodywork underneath, because everything flows into one another. So again, these are little things that we've learned over the course of time. Now before I go into the carpet set, let's just cover the last piece here, which is the lower bulkhead. Lower bulkhead cover, as I alluded to, is this piece here that goes underneath the main upper bulkhead cover. Goes from left to right on the car. Obviously has the cutaway there for the prop shaft gearbox tunnel. Early cars like this one use Moquette. It has a foam padding underneath it as well, which we supply. Moquette is a very thin, short pile, unbacked carpet-like material. It's a very high quality, it's wall content. And Jaguar used this a lot during this era of manufacture for certain bodywork panels, but also the backs of their seats and things like that. When it moved to the Series 2, they changed it to vinyl, and an obvious upgrade to that is leather if you wanted to as well. So bear that in mind, and that's just sold as a singular two-piece kit as such, with obviously the foam elements of things there. Now let's go on to the actual carpet set itself. Move that out of the way. So carpet set, we'll start with the gearbox side. So you had what we refer to as the front gearbox sides, and then the rear gearbox sides. Front gearbox sides, let's just grab that book, are right underneath the dash. Let's have a look. Here we go. So these are the front gearbox sides here, right next to the pedals. So right underneath the dash there. So you get a left and right of those. It's worth noting for left-hand drive cars, you had a big D heel pad on the left-hand one, which was for you to rest your foot against when driving along. But the right-hand drive versions didn't have one, because obviously you don't change the foot that you use for accelerating, etc. Just the side of the car you sit on. So you get front gearbox sides, and then the rear gearbox sides are effectively these ones just behind it, which sit directly underneath the console area, just here and here. And they actually get clamped underneath the console, which is why on these ones you get edging on the top of them, but on these ones you don't. You only get edging on the front and bottom sections there. And again, it goes back to that concept I'm talking about, where certain bits are on show and certain bits overlap. So keep that in mind there. Now the rear gearbox sides, whereas those are literally mirror images of one another, these aren't. They're slightly different to one another. The right hand one was slightly smaller, the left hand one was slightly bigger. Left hand one also had these fixings on them, which basically allowed you to pop it down in place on the side of the gearbox. And on the back of it, you get a Hardura pocket sewn in, normally in black. And then you also get this extra felt piece here for padding inside. Now, a lot of people often ask what this is all for. And I think we're probably one of the only companies that actually bothers putting this on, but it was original for the cars. on the left hand side of the gearbox, you had this inspection cover rubber gauntlet, as seen just here. And basically this being on a flap hinge effectively allowed access to that. So you'd turn it up to get access to it. And then inside the pocket, you would keep a oil measuring stick or something alike to actually measure it all. And that's why that's there. So again, not many companies bother going to that detail. We do, because we know exactly what it was meant to be used for, and we have original templates and carpets, etc., that we have made all of our patterns from. So you get a pair of those. Then you get the toe boards. So they're in the firewall toe board area, exactly on the vertical in front of the front floors, right down behind the pedals, just here, effectively. So you get a pair of those. Then obviously you get the main front floors. Pair of them. They do differ slightly between left-hand drive and right-hand drive. As mentioned, we have patterns for both, and this kit is specifically a right-hand drive. They're bound all the way round, and then they had obviously this big heel pad in the middle of them. Now originally the heel pads during this era were a material called Storvik, which is effectively a coloured plastic material, and we can offer that, and it is available in probably a handful of colours. Now what we do, if you've gone for a colour scheme that Storvik's not available in, we then use plastic and cover it in Leathercloth, which is the same material we use for the edging. Very robust material, very, very useful for heel pads. It's in fact what other car manufacturers use for heel padding material during the same era. So we'd default to a Leathercloth to tie in with the binding if Storvik's not available. But as with this one, as I mentioned earlier, this customer's gone for a full leather upgrade kit, and therefore we've even done the heel pads in leather on this. He's gone for Jonathon smooth leather, so there's not much of a grain to it there, and it's literally on a plastic backing, proper contact adhesive used. We've used the same processes for absolutely donkey's years, so don't worry about durability on those sorts of things and longevity. It's tried and tested over many, many decades. So that's a nice upgrade touch that we can offer for people that are going for a bit more of a custom look with those sorts of things. But generally speaking, our carpet sets are done with Storvik where the colours allow, or they then default to plastic covering, Leathercloth covering plastic if there's no Storvik in that colour available. Now obviously these, as I mentioned, are the dished rear floors, front floors, recessed ones. So they dip down. They're called, we refer to them as non-flat floors, versus the much earlier and very rare flat floors where it's all just kind of one piece, but they kind of dish down in. So they do take a bit of trimming. You can't just plonk them down and expect them to fit nicely. You do need to get, this one's done not bad actually, you need to get those kind of contours going properly in the front floors there. So they do take a bit of fitting if you want them to look good. So bear that in mind, and obviously we're more than happy to help you or your trimmer achieve that look and finish if you're unsure. We've got plenty of photos to show you as well of what it should look like. And then finally, for the carpet set, you get a pair of cross members. So there's literally a cross member that goes from left to right on the car, from one inner sill rocker panel to the other inner sill rocker panel, and this is a piece of carpet that covers over there. And again, similar theme to some of the other bits, it kind of bends over as a effectively a rectangle, cube, whatever, and again there's enough on there that you'll end up going down onto the floor again, so it tucks underneath the adjacent edge, hence there's no binding on these edges because it tucks underneath. So that's that piece. Right, I think that's covered everything. Yeah, I reckon we're there. So yeah, like I say, oh no, there we go. Other things to consider. You obviously want to think about the fixings. Originally the fixings for E-types were these plastic mushroom clips. You got a male and a female version. Obviously you get more than two per set, but we supply those. They are sold separately to the carpet set, but they are included as standard in the trim kit. Then the other thing you want to consider is our underfelt under carpet jute felt kit. That's obviously sound and heat proofing, but it is very much the traditional version of it. It's very much in line with what they offered originally. You can obviously get modern day versions, Dynamat, Dodomat, to name a couple of brands. Now people often ask, do I need our felt kit as well as those? Depends. We obviously very much actively encourage you to use the modern day stuff It's really, really good. I've got it in my car. We don't supply it currently, but do check on our website. That might be in addition to our range shortly. But I'm not going to try and argue that a natural jute felt is anywhere near as good in terms of technology as the Monday stuff. It's not. So if you do line yours out with the Monday stuff, that's great, but you've got to be wary of the thickness. Some of the Monday stuff, the really high-end ones, are very, very thin when everything's said and done. And in that case, you will want one of our natural jute felt kits as well, because it will help purely with the placement of the carpets. You've got to remember that the carpets were templated and designed with a certain thickness underneath of it. You take that thickness away, they're not going to fit exactly how they should. So keep that in mind. We generally recommend anywhere between 5 and 10 millimeters underneath the carpets. So our felt kit is about 6 mil, so bear that in mind. But after that, it's up to you whether you're doubling up on the modern day stuff and the traditional stuff. And it's worth noting as well with our felt kit, and I do touch on this in another video where I show the felts in more detail, we also put 2 pairs of front floor felts in our kits as standard. That's not a mistake, that is us covering our bases. We've had feedback from some trimmers over the years that doubling up the thickness on the front floors can help the fitment in certain areas around there. So I wouldn't say take that as a rule of thumb. That's been a preference of a couple of our trimmers who, granted, they do absolutely beautiful work, but then other people have decided to omit the second set. Completely up to you, but as standard, we supply double layer, double thickness effectively of the front floor areas in our felt kits as standard, so keep that in mind. Anyway, I think that's actually it now. Hope you found that useful. Tried to cover everything as concisely as possible. Thanks for tuning in. Please remember to like, subscribe and share with other classic car enthusiasts, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.